On the 6th of October 2025, the sun set quietly over Uma Ukpai Ibom State. News rippled through the churches, homes, and streets across Nigeria. Reverend Dr. Uma Ukpai, the fairy evangelist, had gone home. He was 80 years old. To many, it felt like a prophet had left the land. A man whose voice had once shaken stadiums had finally found rest. But to understand the man who would one day be called God's general, we must return to where it all started, to a small village called Asaga in Ohafia, Abia State. Born on 7th of January 1945, Uma Ukpai entered a world still reeling from colonial rule and poverty. His father's early death, when he was just 10 years old, left the family struggling to survive. The tragedy, though painful, became the seed of compassion that would one day define his ministry. As a young boy, Uma grew up fast. He understood hardship, not from stories, but from experience. In 1958, at the age of 13, he gave his life to Christ. He later said it was like a light switching on inside him, a call he could never ignore. Life did not hand him easy victories. Education came through persistency and prayer. He attended the Uma Ukpai Memorial Primary School and later schools in Aba and Ogoni. He worked odd jobs to pay fees, often sleeping in classrooms and walking miles to attend lessons. He eventually trained as an electrical engineer, proved that even then, his mind was wired for both logic and faith, but he hungered for more than technical knowledge. His thirst was for understanding God's words and how to make it real in people. He later traveled abroad, studying journalism in the United Kingdom and earning degrees in theology and divinity in the United States. The combination of faith, communication, and discipline would shape him into one of the Nigerian's most articulate preachers. In the 1970s, Nigeria was finding its feet as a nation, and Pentecostalism was still in its infancy. Churches were small, revivals were rare, and evangelists were few. Then came Uma Ukpai, fearless, fiery, and unshamedly charismatic. He founded the Uma Ukpai Evangelistic Association, UUEA, a ministry not tied to any denomination, but dedicated to preaching Christ, healing the sick, and lifting the poor. From Aba to Jos, Lagos to Uyo, the crowds came, tens of thousands, filling open fields and stadiums. People said he prayed with authority that pierced the soul. He would speak, the hearts would melt. He would pray, and some claimed to see. The blind see, the lame walk, and the hopeless restored. In 1982, he led the Greater Ibadan for Christ crusade. 3 years later, Greater Lagos for Christ shook the city. A week of preaching, miracles, and unity that drew believers across denominations. That single crusade gave birth to the Pentecostal Fellowship of Nigeria, PFN, a platform that brought together leaders like Benson Idahosa, W.F. Kumuyi, and Enoch Adeboye. Uma Ukpai was not just a preacher, he was a bridge builder. His passion was revival, but his heart burned for unity. Over the decades, his greater crusades became landmarks: Greater Ohafia for Christ, Greater Akwa Ibom for Christ, and Yoma 1 Million Man Crusade. Cities were stirred and lives were changed. Yet, behind the pulpit fire was a man of compassion. He never forgot what it meant to be poor, fatherless, and broken. Through his ministry, he built hospitals like the Uma Ukpai Eye Center and King of Kings Specialist Hospital, offering treatments to thousands, often for free. He established schools and a polytechnic, funded scholarships, and trained youth in vocational skills. He would tell his students, "We cannot claim to know God and watch others suffer." In his later years, his focus expanded beyond the crusades to empowerment. a legacy for faith in action. He was married to Reverend Philomena Ukpai, a woman of grace and quiet strength. Together, they raised 8 children and adopted 1. Their marriage was not just a partnership, but a ministry. But even prophets faced storms. One day, tragedy struck. 2 of their children died in a car crash. For a man who had seen others healed through his prayers, the pain cut deep. He wept, not as a preacher, but as a father. For a while, he withdrew from public view, wrestling with questions that had no easy answers. But when he returned, his message has changed. He began to speak more about heaven, forgiveness, and endurance. He said, "When you walk with God long enough, pain becomes part of your training." Like every public figure, he faced criticism. Some accused him of exaggerating miracles. Others questioned his methods or wealth. But those who knew him closely said he lived simple. He was contented, always giving more than he received. He often warned young preachers against fame and greed, saying, "If your anointing fits only your pocket, you are not serving God, you are serving yourself." His humanity and very honesty earned him both enemies and admirers. Yet he remained unmoved, focused on his calling. In his later years, age slowed his steps, but never his fire. Even when illness crept in, he continued to preach. Sometimes seated, his voice had softened, but his faith never dimmed. He often said he was ready for heaven, but not done on earth. When he turned 80 in January 2025, tributes poured in from around the world. Pastors, presidents, and ordinary believers who had felt the ripple of his life. But just 9 months later, on that quiet October morning, the fire that had burned from 8 decades flickered out. He passed away peacefully, surrounded by his family. His wife called it a glorious transition.